my case, it has been critical, in part because my work has to do with doing research in classrooms and understanding how learning, and teaching are related to each other. But also as individually as a teacher, when I started looking more carefully at my students' learning, I opened Pandora's box. Honestly, it was very revealing the extent to which what I thought was happening in my classroom was not really happening in my classroom. And looking at data was critical to be able to first recognize that I was not, my teaching strategies were not as effective as I wanted to be, but also when I started doing interventions, to evaluate the extent of which those interventions were really doing what I wanted. It is, as I said, going into the classroom with a different disposition, or a different perspective is important. We typically, if you're a traditional instructor, you think of yourself as the conveyor of the information. If you are more into active learning, maybe you see yourself as the creator of opportunities for students to learn. But once you see yourself also as an investigator, not as a researcher of what is going on in your classroom, you develop a different approach to your teaching, because then you realize that it is not about only creating opportunities, but it's about getting data to show if those opportunities are actually doing what you want them to do. I think that there are different types of research projects that you can do in the classroom. Some of them will require quantitative approaches. Some of them will require qualitative approaches. And in my case, I have had students that are graduate students that have been involved in doing this type of research projects, and they have developed very valuable skills that have to do with analysis of data, both quantitative and qualitative. Just from the skill perspective, that is valuable. And to start small and start with data that maybe is already being generated in your course, so that you don't have to, from the very beginning, think about, okay, I have to generate the data. There is data that is already being generated in any course, from exam grades, or homework grades, or things like that. So I would start, in fact, with a small quantitative project. I think that particularly because we are more used to analyze quantitative data in general, I would start with just looking at my students' grades, and maybe looking at the grades of different groups of students, females versus males, students from underrepresented minorities versus students from represented groups. That data is already there. And then you can get used to look at the data. And then I would move to projects that maybe are more qualitative, in which I have to collect data in terms of, for example, students' written answers, and analyze the written answers and look for patterns. And that also could be that is data that is already generated, through activities in the classroom, through homework, through exams. And then later I would move into, okay, now I'm going to do an intervention, and I'm going to see what is the effect of the intervention. I think that is much more difficult to accomplish. It needs more training and skill and time. So I just would start small and then grow as I feel more comfortable with what I'm doing and my skills for looking at the student data, both quantitative and qualitative.